Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? How's everyone doing? Welcome back to another live stream with me, Ian Robinson. I am the senior trainer here at Maxon for ZBrush related stuff. So if you guys have questions and all that good stuff, go ahead and feel free to ask during the stream. Real quick before we get started in what's going on today, just wanted to point out the fact that the ZBrush Summit is coming up and we are having a sculpt-off competition. And the ZBrush Summit is going to be November 7th through the 9th. And if you guys want to participate in the sculpt off at all, then just come on down, follow the link, and then go ahead and sign up. It's going to be super awesome. So we're celebrating 25 years of ZBrush. It's been 25 years ZBrush has been around. That's insane, and I love it. But what's cool about this time is that we actually are doing, like kind of like a player card game challenge where you actually get a preset of cards. You pick which card it is that suits your needs, and then from there you make a sculpt and fit it to the card, and that's all done within the 3-hour time limit. So it's gonna be super cool. What's up, Pat Node Prince? How you doing, buddy? How you doing? So yeah, if you guys have any questions or you're interested in this contest, please feel free to just go ahead and jump down where that link is. And without further ado, let's put some music on. I like the pretzel rocks of things. What are we playing here? What we got? Ooh, all right, cool. Yeah, let's do a little bit of synthwave. It's more for me than anything else. I just keep my ears going. That's how I like to jam. So today I thought we would discuss about VDM brushes and curve brushes, kind of customizing a little bit about what they are and how to make them yourself. So today will be a little bit more of like, instead of just making something, like we'll make something, but we're gonna kind of go over brush creation because ZBrush has a ton of things that you can absolutely use to your benefit to create, custom brushes that will actually do a specific thing. So that's what we want to cover today. So let me go ahead and get my little pen. Yep. You're excited for the sculpt off? What's up, wild noodlers? How you doing? Noodlers, how you doing? Ooh, ooh. All right. So let's go ahead and start doing the stuff and things today. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully my internet. I've had construction, just fair warning, I've had construction happen in my area. So if the internet, it looks solid, but if the internet starts to kind of cut out a little bit, then I will know why. But hopefully not. So, okay, let's go ahead and jump into some ZBrush. So first off, I actually wanted to showcase how to create custom VDMs. I think it's one of those really hidden gems that I don't think I see too many people really jumping into. So I really wanted to just take the time to do it. You can create custom VDMs in a lot of things. So, and for a lot of features, it's been around for a while. So I want to go through that process. What's up, Scree? How you doing? What up? What up? Actually, it's Heather. Everybody, guys, I got to say hi to Heather. Hi. Good. I'm excited too. Sweet. All right. So what I want to do is create like a little crazy little fun character. And for those who are watching the VOD, so you guys are watching this afterwards, or if you don't know what a VDM is, first off, we'll just grab a simple project. We'll open up the brush menu. And then we have VDM brushes that are actually over here. Now, what does VDM stand for? Vector Displacement Mesh. That's what it stands for, right? And it's different than a curved brush, right? Or a typical alpha brush. If we were to take something like, let's say, just for the sake of argument, if we were to use an alpha to generate a certain type of mesh, so actually using the standard brush, going to drag rec, you have all these alphas, right? And so if I pick a star and I drag this out, boom, I have a star, right? But the problem is that you get fall off. So if I don't want fall off, I need to change the focal shift. So if I change the focal shift, boom, no fall off. But what's the advantage of this? The advantage of the alpha, obviously, is that you get a nice clean image. The disadvantage is there's no such thing as an overhang. And if you don't know, overhang is anytime you have mesh that hangs over. There you go, overhang. That hangs over and kind of creates, it needs support. And this is where VDMs will come in. And you'll know it's different because if we go back to our standard brush, your normal alpha just says alpha. That's all it says. But if we were to pick, let's say, like Chisel 3D, if we look at the alpha now, it says 3D over there. So this is actually something that is going to kind of help. And then, like, if we take this ear, for example, and drag this out, boom, overhang, right? So this is what we're going to be talking about and creating today, which would be cool. Your cover's blown. Exactly. You know it. So how do we start making a VDM brush? Ideally, the easiest way is actually to open up your lightbox menu. So hitting that comma key. Yay! And then we're going to go to miscellaneous. And then from here, you have a lot of things, but the one we're going to focus on right now is actually this template right here, which is just called Brush 3D Template Polygroup. We're going to click this guy. This is my favorite guy. Now, the reason why we picked this one is because if we turn on the wireframe by hitting Shift F, you can actually see we have polygroups here, which means we can isolate a certain polygroup, mask off, and then have this area in for sculpting, which is fantastic. We don't need the floor for this. And then also we have subdivisions by default here. So we'll have a massive amount of subdivisions that we can work with to get some good resolution. And then we're also going to come through here and look at the display properties because double is turned on. Double just showcases the backside of single-sided geometry for those who don't know. Yay! So let's go ahead and let's make something. I was actually thinking about making kind of like a cute little like kit bashy thing. So we're gonna make like an arm, we're gonna make some legs, and then we're gonna turn around and make like a face, and then we'll put it all together and make things look kind of cool. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. So first thing we want to do actually is go to our lowest subdivision, and we want to go down to morph target. And the reason why we want to go down to morph target and store a morph target is because at some point in time, we're going to try to protect this area as much as possible by masking it off and subdividing so we can sculpt only in this area. But at some point in time, what will happen is, you know, we might mess this mesh up here. And if we do that, we can drop to our lowest subdivision and we can switch and get this kind of plane back. Or what we could do is use a morph target brush. So we'll go B for brush, M, and then where is the morph target? What letter is it? G. G, yay. And so then we can actually paint back that area, and then that way we're not disrupting anything else. So that's kind of the idea behind it. So that's why I love using a morph target for that. All right, let's start making something kind of cool. And of course, if you guys have any questions too that doesn't even relate to what I'm doing, feel free. Just don't even worry about it. Just go ahead and start. You can start asking. So let's make the hand first. So I'm gonna go ahead and mask off this area. I'm gonna just sculpt at the high resolution. We won't have the wireframe on. We'll just protect this area. But let's go ahead and make like the hand. And so we're just gonna start using some clay buildup. And we'll actually drop to a lower subdivision for this. Let's keep this relatively something like this. There we go. I'm just relaxing the mesh a little bit because I don't want to stretch the wireframe too much. But that will happen. I'm also not really worried about the topology right now. Let's turn off subdivision. There we go. We're just going to start making something that's going to be kind of cool. I have cutesy in mind, so it's going to be low resolution, so to speak. There we go. Get a thumb here. How's everybody else doing today? What are you all up to? Anything fun? Any good sculpting projects, art projects, Halloween projects? Awesome. This is an ugly hand. That is a-okay. You know what I'm going to try to do actually for this? I'm just going to go ahead and I will delete lower here for a second. Let me see something. Yeah, I'm just going to store a morph target here. Even though I'm storing a morph target at this state, it's really for the border. That's really what I'm more focused on. But I'm going to try something too. I've never tried keeping like Z-remeshing the mesh and then making a VDM. Shouldn't matter. So I'm gonna sculpt in the high, tear it apart, Z-remesh it, do all that good jazz. Anyway, because this hand's ugly as sin right now, and that's okay. we're getting warmed up. And then we'll go through the next step. You did your taxes today. Ooh. Ooh, boy. That's always fun. Said no one ever. You really know how to party. Yeah, that is something for sure. Ooh, I don't envy you. I did my taxes actually. In the US, tax season's usually around April, but because of the fires and stuff like that that had occurred in the LA area, was actually able to, you know what, I'm actually going to do something. I'm going to go all the way back here to the beginning. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull this out, and then we're going to go ahead, delete lower on this. I'm going to kick up to the highest subdivision, delete lower, and I'm going to just kind of focus on what I talked about. We're going to ZBrush it. So I'm going to make the thumb differently now. Let's make sure that my morph target is still there. Store it. Perfect. There we go. Okay, great. We're going to do something a little different because it's already looking, I'm already deviating. There we go. Okay. Let's get the fingies in here. We'll do one fingy. There we go. And it's okay, I'll be stylized. Hey, what's up, Eric? How you doing? What's up, Frantra? And Frantra, how you doing? Chaos. And just checking, how does the update already include the new ZBrush? Does this update already include the new ZBrush features or not yet? The new ZBrush feature as of September's release is included. That is correct, yes. So for example, one of the new features is the Z Modeler brush, and the way it actually has a whole new menu with like presets. And then also too, you have the highlighting that's more affected, that really lets you kind of, you know, really see what's going on for edge loops, faces, and points, stuff like that. Yeah. Which feature are you looking at? I can demo it too if that's something that you'd be interested in. Just make sure we mask off the appropriate stuff. This is why we store a morph target. Okay. Whee! Nope, hitting all the wrong buttons. There we go. Okay. Let's go ahead and control drag, duplicate this. All of this will make sense eventually, I promise. We're going with a kind of cartoony character here. Actually, before I do that, you can tell how indecisive I am today. There we go. Let's do that. And then let's control drag. Let's move this over here. Man, it's been a while since I've been to one of these streams. Right? Or has it? When was the last time I streamed? I can't remember the last time I streamed. It's been a few weeks. I wanted to make sure to stream today, though, because obviously I have Lightbox that's coming up. So let's do this too real quick. Let's come in here. Let's do Polygroups. So you can check this out. A lot of times people would assume that you have to do auto groups when you have something like this, right? But you can actually hide objects auto group and it won't affect your other polygroups. So this is something that I do quite often. So this way I can just isolate certain elements and still keep my original polygroup. So if you have polygroups that you need to keep on objects that are not welded together, that's the easiest way to go about it. Okay. We're almost done with this one per se. We need to weld it together at this point. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and move this in here. We're going to come into Sculptress. Not Sculptress. We're going to do Remesh by, not Remesh by ZBrusher. Remesh by Union. That is totally fine. I see what happened there. Never mind. Okay. So we're going to go ahead, kind of store this morph target here. Not store. We're going to store that history state. I'm going to try something new. I've never tried to Dynamesh and ZBrush and then do all that stuff. So let's do that. Not blur. Let's go pick. 128 should be fine. Trying new things today. It's going to give me cheese grater. Okay, no worries. Then this is what we're going to do. We're going to remove our morph target for a second. No, that should be fine. Form above. Right, makes sense. Okay. Well, that's going to be interesting. Okay. Let me try to think on how to do this. I deviated from the plan a little bit, but I may want to start over. It's not letting me do. I was hoping it was going to let me do something, and it's not going to let me do it. So that's fine. So that's okay. I'm going to start over. Welcome to the stream. Yes, visit London when... That's a good question, guys. I would love to go to London. Here's a question. I extract a part of the mesh. How can I make the edge extract smooth but sip? Oh, dude, Eric, such a great question. Absolutely. Here, since I just already like kind of crapped my hand, I can show you right now. It's actually quite easy. So check this out. So let's go to our basic project, and then let's do something for you. You're asking like extracted a mesh edge. So we'll do something like a shirt, but it could be any object here. So check this out. So we'll go here. You don't have to delete lower. I'm going to just go ahead and grab my mask lasso so we can, right, get something that makes sense like that. Okay, great. Kind of mask this off. Okay. So the first thing is that your topology is going to matter. The better your resolution, then the easier it's going to be to do a cleaner extract. But either way, like it's going to make a copy based off of the resolution and the polygroups you have underneath that, right? So for example, if I were to just make a polygroup on this, subdivide one more time here, and then mask this section off, right? The quality of the mask is going to generate, or the quality of the mask and the quality of the underlying mesh is what's going to cause it to give you the initial resolution of the extraction. So just kind of keep that in mind. So when you're looking at the mesh here, notice how kind of jaggy that is. That's going to be a direct reflection of the extracted mesh. However, that all being said, it doesn't really matter because we can ZBrush everything. So if we sharpen that as much as possible to see what it's going to look like, then let's go to our subtool. Let's go to our extract. Now, this is where I'm going to preach that zero thickness for most of anything that you're going to do is the ideal way to do that. Because once you apply thickness, now you have double-sided geometry. So even if you're doing armor or you're doing like some sort of band that wraps around a character, I definitely recommend just zero thickness to start. It's going to make cleanup a lot better. So if I do the extract process and then say accept, let's just hit solo. Like I said, here's the underlining mesh. And here is the kind of idea of it. And so, of course, it doesn't bring over any subdivisions. So this is what it looks like at its highest subdivision. If I were to come through here and then just like clear this mask and then say delete lower, here's the mesh underneath, here's the mesh it gave me. So that's the first thing to understand. Second thing is that it gives us actually a mask that is not 100%. It actually protects all the internals and it's leaving the external exposed. So what you want to do is you actually want to soften the mask just a little bit by control tapping in middle space anywhere in on the mesh. You don't have to go much, just enough. And then you want to come down here to deformation and go polish by features. And if we look at just kind of the way the edge is going, so let's zoom in, we could see here if I polish by features, it's going to kind of clean that up a bit. Now, if I open up this little bubble that's right here, that's just a different algorithm at that point. So if I do that again, it's going to be super clean, right? And so there it is. It's looking pretty nice. Now, something to note is that if I were to try to kind of, like if I had points or vertices that were more like, colliding with each other like this, then all Polish by Features is going to do is it's just going to shove those together and give you a nice clean edge here. What we're going to use that edge for is to tell ZBrush that we want to have that clean on the ZBrush. So then from here, let's go ahead and clear our mask, go to ZBrush, and then here's my kind of secret sauce settings. I always look at the initial total points. So right now, my points for this object is 41,000, which is not really all that high. But here, 5 is 5,000. So that should be fine. 5,000 should be more than enough, right? So we'll start with that. We'll go to keep groups and smooth the groups down to 0. This doesn't cause shrinking. What it causes is smoothing. But when the points get low enough, the smoothing is going to happen more aggressively at fewer points. So it's going to appear like it's shrinking, but it's actually giving a smooth process. We don't want that. So we're going to drop that to 0. And then adaptive, we want as even of quads as possible. So we're going to take adaptive size and drop this down to say something like 2. And then we'll leave everything else alone. And then as long as symmetry is turned on, let's turn perspective off. We don't need it. Let's just go ahead and hit ZBrush. And this is going to cache the process. And now it's going to give me something like this. And now the quads on the inside are looking pretty nice. Let's just do half. And let's just do this a couple times. And boom. There you go. Nice, even, smooth edging. Everything looks really solid. And so from here, this is going to basically give you the base for this. And this doesn't really, this process I just showed you works for a lot of things. So here now, we can just go ahead and like do a little inflate and scale that up. But same thing, if you wanted to do, again, like we wanted to come through here and give him like some sort of like band or armor plate here. So let's do this. Let's give him like, let's do something extreme, right? There you go. Even if we wanted to do something like this, all right? I want to sharpen that. Now, this is where I'm going to say you want your underlining mesh to be a lot better, and you want to focus on the cleanup a lot more. So something like this, where like, let's say it's like hard surface, right? What we really want to do is make sure that we have nice, clean edge flow as much as possible. Now, the polish part is going to smooth things out. So that's something we want to avoid. Anytime you're dealing with sharp corners, you're going to really want to make sure that the corners themselves are going to be giving you what you're looking for, right? So you want it to follow any type of edge flow as much as you can. So here, if I were to do the same thing, go to my subtool, go to extract, 0 thickness, and hit accept. Now I have something like this, right? This is going to be a lot more complicated to extract, but again, the process itself can be the same. So we can soften that a little bit. Actually, I would recommend not softening that. I would just leave that as such. And let's go to deformation. And then again, if we polish by features, it's going to go ahead, just turn off the points here. It's going to really, again, we want to make sure we're not super aggressive. But what we can do to get straight edge protection is actually go to your move brush, go up to brush, curve, AccuCurve, and kind of come in here and reestablish your sharp edges, because this will give ZBrush a little bit more of a guide. So this is a little bit more of a cleanup process, but it's going to benefit you. Because again, everything with polishing kind of smooths. So we want to make sure we're not really smoothing. So we want some sharp edges. So a little bit of manual work. But there's another process for this too. And I would actually recommend doing this a different way, but just to kind of show you if you are extracting. Yeah, something like that. Going a little fast, you want to take your time. But with the AccuCurve, you see it lets me help establish that line pretty quickly. So if I were to come in here, kind of come in and do this, again, pull this line down. There we go. And you're kind of making your shapes. Once you have this and you do cleanup, now from here, let's just go ahead and say same first, but let's do the same settings on smooth curves and adaptive size, ZBrush. And so now you can see here, it's protecting these areas a lot more. And so this would help you out a lot to get you similar shapes. And then you can actually have something like this. And then there you go. You got nice clean topology. Now, one of the things you can do is you can actually draw these shapes out a little bit differently using a different tool. So instead of using the mass extract, what you could use is actually, you could actually, instead of using that tool, delete lower here, and you can come into your masking function and you can do mesh project. And now mesh project, it's really fun because mesh project here, it has the lasso, but you can use a curve for this, right? So you can draw this out, say something like this. And then boom, you can have a mesh. Now this is massive. What happened here? Well, this is massive because of the actual intensity. We don't need RGB. Let's drop the intensity down to say something like 6. Let's do that again. I'm just doing Alt tap. Boom. And now you have this. And this is actually fairly decent. And again, you could just isolate the one mesh that you want and then do that same process with AccuCurve and get things kind of straight as much as possible. Now, the other thing you could do is actually use the topological brush. And this might be something that's really going to help you out. So here, the topological brush is really cool because it's a topology brush, right? So if I have a nice small brush size, so let's say something like 2, it's going to draw out curves. Now, my curves are acting a little weird because I actually have a history state stored. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my history state so that it follows the mesh as much as possible. There we go. And now look, I can build topology like this. Alt clear that, and then I can come through with a brush size of literal 1, and then 1. There we go. Tap that, and it's going to give me really nice low resolution. Single-sided geometry is what it will give me for that. So something like the topological brush, again, we can make, what's the benefit is we could draw a curve, we can rotate. If we zoom in close enough, we can extend that curve, cross over the curve, and we can make custom shapes here. Right, so then we could come over like this, and then let's come over here, zoom in, a curve, extend that curve, come in here, extend that curve, right? So now the problem here is that we are getting a little bit of interesting lapse because it's saying that like this part right here is not, it's not nice and clean. So getting custom shapes is going to be a little interesting, but that's okay. We want to keep things simple, right? So if we come in here and then we get a nice clean shape, say something like this. Awesome. Now we have clean topology, Alt drag, and then from here, just tap one time, split this off. So we'll just say subtool, come in here and go split hidden. Okay, perfect. Now we could just use the modeler brush to refine this. So if we don't want these things here, just come in here and say delete, boom, and just get rid of those points. And then also you can come in and just work off of this. So you can come in and say like, let's actually do an extrude. And then let's make sure we're extruding. And if we need to snap to surface, we can. So now you could just come through here, tap Alt one time, and you could drag this piece out. Right, then you can also add in different edge loops if you needed to. We don't need to crease. Keep this here. Boom, there you go. So then you could start really working off of your base shape. So you can use Topology brush, get a base shape, then start using Z modeler to work with it. You had the page open on your iPad, nice. Let's see here, I missed a lot. Anyway, hopefully that's helpful. But yeah, those are the ways that you can really focus on getting things nice and clean. This will help a lot. Mesh project are interesting to try. I've seen some people use Topology brushes, Retopology tool. Yeah, Eric, that is what some people have done for sure. And that's a great process as well. So we do have more Retopology stuff coming soon. And as soon as I can talk about it, it's going to make your life a lot easier in that regard. But yeah, this is one way that you can go ahead and do that. Now, what's cool about the mesh project too, and something that I didn't really touch on, is that if we clear this, so we use the mesh project, if you don't move your camera, so if your camera is stationary or locked, which will be beneficial, let's say you want to make a chest plate. So we're actually going to move this back to lasso, which is what it is by default. So let's say we want to make a chest plate like this. Okay, great. Now what's cool about this is that if I actually press and hold Control, and then I start making a shape on the inside, and then hold Alt and let go, it will delete that geometry. If I start adding, let's say something like this, and then I press and hold Shift, it's going to add to that topology. So just think like you're off over here and you're like, oh yeah, I want this custom shape. It looks like this. Great, perfect, boom. But now I need this actually to be pointed. Like I want to point this. Then you just go ahead, press and hold Control, start dragging this mesh out. Come in here, press and hold Shift, boom, and then you could get something that looks pretty cool. So these are ways that you could do that. And again, the subtraction is also very helpful. So you can get really custom shapes real quickly, which also helps for like filigree and stuff like that. Skip sleeping. You don't need it. No, of course not. What did I miss there? I want to have to. Oh, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, not a problem. Let's see. Yeah, skip sleeping. It's fine. Well, I can't encourage that. Okay, let's go back to the start of things with VDM brushes. So let's unlock this brush. And then let's actually... I started this whole stream with like, let's do VDM brushes. And then I messed up my hand, which is totally fine. So I'm going to do something a little simpler for right now. Right now, I'm going to actually kind of sculpt just a little bit of a face. And then from there, let's mask that off. Actually, before we do that, let's come in here. I don't need the floor. But again, back to morph target. So again, when I will come through and think of things that don't always work. I wanted to see about actually like making the mesh and then, using ZBrush and all that stuff to give me a better benefit of it. And ZBrush will probably still work, but Dynamesh did not work on that. But I'm going to just skip from like any type of, too complicated of a thing. So let's keep it even more simpler than initially thought. So here, let me end up making let me make a mouth. Let's make a mouth first. Okay. And again, I was going to go for something that was kind of cute. So let's mask this off there. There we go. And now for me on this, let's just go ahead and start carving in. And this is what's really cool about VDMs is that we can really just kind of play with the main shape here. It will make it worthwhile. Okay, so I'm working with the high. You can drop down, of course. So we're going to make a little bit of a weird thing. So let's make a few things. I'll make the hand last because it deviated from what I wanted. There we go. I'll even make a little bit of a chin indicator. There we go. There we go. Okay. And we're also going to give this a mouth bag. Yay for mouth bags. So we're going to go ahead and just pull this down a little bit. Mouth bags are awesome because it helps with animation. Now you see this right here. I'm pulling on the side and it's actually giving me that kind of corner. And that's because I still have AccuCurve turned on. And I forgot to turn that off. So let's go ahead and turn that AccuCurve. But still, even if I grab to this point, it's not going to grab 100%. So that's where the move infinite's going to come in. There we go. Kind of smooth that down just a little bit. There we go. That way, if we do any type of... the mouth bag's great because it gives you more realistic shadows. The hand was a bold choice. Absolutely, it sure was. Yeah, we could do a little bit of a vampire mouth. Let's do it. I like that idea. That actually became another back on the body. Yeah. Anyway, we're not going to have that super strong. Anyway, I like to live boldly, Scree. I really do. Or Heather. I'm just going to call you Heather. Because everybody knows. I know that you know that I know. Okay. So let's do that. Let's give him little vampire teeth. So we're gonna up the resolution a little bit, kind of smooth this down. So every time I go back up the resolution, I get all these little artifacts that's happening from my brush. That's fine. If I wanted to avoid that, I can actually just, instead of doing it that way, I could have just dropped it down, deleted higher, and then subdivided it again, which works out just all the same. Whichever works out well for you guys. And then again, I still mask this off. So let's give him little vampire teeth. So let's just grab the snake hook brush. And let's go ahead, add AccuCurve to the mix. I'm actually gonna drop resolution on this. There we go, because then we can divide up. And then let's also give him a little bit of like where that Cupid's bow should be. Just an indicator, not too crazy. Just a little indicator there. And then here, something in my... All right, and from here, let's do this. Okay. Okay, so let's say we're satisfied with this. Yeah, let's say we're happy with this. Now, how do we make this into that VDM? That's the one thing I hadn't covered yet. So what we're going to do first is, obviously, we want to save our projects, so let's do that. So let's go to ZBrush Projects, and then let's go to... we'll just call this VDMs and curves. Okay. And for this, we're just going to call this Right now, we'll call this vamp mouth. Okay, there you go. So now at this point, what we're going to do is, let's say we want to make this a VDM. That's like the most important part. Okay, so we do have the morph target that we wanted to focus on. I want to re-clean up this area because we did move this a bit. So we drop this to our lower subdivision. And then from here, we go to our morph target. And we just make sure we kind of paint that back so that there's no crazy bumps or anything like that. Should be fine. Okay. Well, I guess it's looking good. That should be fine. Yay. Okay. So now let's just go ahead and turn this into a brush. So again, we need to grab our Chisel 3D brush. We need to find the... We're going to overwrite this, so it's not a big deal. You can add to it, of course, but we're going to overwrite this. So we're just going to go with the brush, and then we're going to go to create, and then we're going to say make multi-alpha. Not create insert, not nanomesh, create multi-alpha. And then that's going to give us this right here. And boom. Now we have these. Now we have this, which is awesome. Now, of course, you can adjust the focal shift because the focal shift's at 100. So you can adjust the focal shift. If your 100% focal shift was giving you any type of sharp edge, which is what we could see right here, that's from the outer part of this part. So just adjust your focal shift a little bit, and that will get rid of that for the most part. So there you go. So then you can add that. So then we can go ahead and try it, like, let's say on a sphere. Let's go make Polymesh 3D. Perfect. Let's subdivide a few times, get some decent mesh. Boom. Perfect. And of course, the resolution will depict, did the teeth come through? Is there enough resolution for the teeth? Yeah, so now it's going to be resolution based on that teeth. And that's one of the things that we're going to need to kind of like focus on a bit. So anytime you have something like that, you just want to make sure there's enough resolution to capture that. This is a pretty complicated one, actually. But that's okay. There you go. Boom. Gives us a starting point. Yeah, exactly. Trial by error in courses. For anatomy, get decent course to follow first. Oh, what are we talking about here? Oh, there's a lot of chat happening. Let's see. Let me see if I can go back. Actually, how do I improve? Oh, how do I improve? That's what everybody's answering. Do I do big projects or just keep making sloppy sculpts? Okay, honestly, so Ian, that's a great question. I'm assuming your name's Ian, so Ian, nice to meet you, Ian. That's a great question. And honestly, while it depends on what you want to do, but you should practice with digestible projects, meaning don't go so big so quickly if you're trying to achieve a single thing. For example, let's say you're wanting to do props for games, right? Then you might be thinking, okay, well, props, I might have to get into environments. I might have to do crazy environments. But at the end of the day, you should start with just the one thing. So for example, maybe you just want to make a barrel. Make a barrel, get the workflow for that, whatever software you're going to use. So obviously ZBrush would be great for something like that. In fact, I could show you even a cool little tricks you can do for that type of workflow. For example, let's say we just had a cube here. Anyway, and let's just scale the cube down, bring it up, and have like a plank like this, right? It's easy when you can just do like array mesh, open ray mesh, right? Transpose, lock position, and then we can easily rotate on the on the y-axis here. We could go 360 degrees, and we can have like, let's say like 15 of these. Boom, and then boom, you could pull this out, right? And then you could start creating like a random barrel shape, and then you can even go crazy. At this point, I'm just tangenting at this point just to give you an example. But here, then you could come through and you can even make modifications to said thing, right? So here you go, a split open barrel from Donkey Kong. Anyway, so the point is that you can learn the tool that you need to make things first. So let's say you want to use ZBrush to make a thing. Use ZBrush to make a thing, then walk it through the next step. You learn ZBrush to make the asset. Now what do you want to do? Okay, well now you want to texture it. So then you need to learn how to export the barrel and move it into like something like Substance Painter for texturing, right? So little things like that is going to help you. So if you start with a small enough project, then ultimately you'll be able to then from there kind of learn how to walk things through said project. And then bigger projects will make it easier. You know the steps. You need to first learn the steps, and then you need to learn on what things to focus on. So if you're doing, like, let's say, characters, then you need to understand anatomy. And if you're using ZBrush for characters, which you should be, it is industry standard, then you want to come up to, like, the light box and open up tools and open up a project like the anatomy model that ships with ZBrush. It's a female écrochet, but all the right muscles and stuff are here. And if you go to Subtool and you open up this list, all of the proper names. So trapezius, where's that? Let's just solo that. There you go. That's the traps, right? Rectus abdominalis, abdomens. I can't speak today, but you get it. Gluteus maximus. They're all here, right? So you can come through and isolate the muscles. Here too, there's breast fat and tissue, so you can remove that. And you can use this to check your work. Now, this is a female écrochet. It's not much different than a male écrochet. The only difference in a male écrochet is actually bone structure and fat pad placements, and also certain proportions do get changed a little bit. But for the most part, the human anatomy is human anatomy. Male or female, our biceps work the same, our triceps work the same, our abs work the same. It's just the skeletal structure is different between female and male. Fat pads are a different location as well. And so you just got to learn those differences, but it's overall the same. So you'll just need to kind of just understand how this works. And so you have this here, which you can use as reference inside of ZBrush. You can Shift S and stamp that off to the side. And then you can come over to whatever project you're working on. And then when you're doing your blockouts, you can literally match it to there. So what's a head shape size? Okay, great. This is about the size of a head, right? And then you just kind of keep working from there. So ultimately, those are things you want to do. First, know what direction you want to go in. Second, what tools are associated with that direction. Third, take small projects and work on those projects to get from point A to point B and walk it through the steps so then you're familiar with it. Because once you are familiar and you really know the process from A to B, so like, for example, me, I do a lot of toys, statues, game props, etc. So the workflow from one point to another doesn't change too much for me. I understood the workflow process. Now I can focus on the skill level side of it. So there's a lot of little things to know. It just takes time. Yep, absolutely. Not a problem. Okay. So these fangs right here are a little, like this is a little much for this VDM here. And that's okay. So what we could do actually is I'm going to create teeth. I'm going to create teeth as being separate here. I'll create a separate tooth, but I will leave little bumps for where the teeth can go if we wanted to do that. Nah, I don't want to do that. Let's just relax that. There we go. Now, something with VDM creation too is that you could do multiples in the same project. So check this out. So what I can do is this one, let's say I'm happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and Control-Shift-D, duplicate that. That's going to be my vampire mouth. Here, I should have done this in the very beginning, but I can go all the way back to the very beginning before I started sculpting on anything, which is what I should have done originally. And then I could have Control-Shift-D, duplicated this, and then moved this down and call this my base. And then now I have that. If you wanted to keep the... I don't like this song. It's also loud in my ear. I don't like this song. All right, if you wanted to keep the... if you did want to keep the history timeline, just save it as a project. But for right now, mouth is fine. I'm going to go ahead and rename this, and then let's call this one teeth, right? Because you can have multiple at the same time. And then here we're going to just make we're going to make a vampire tooth. There we go. And again, let's mask this off. And what's cool is you can make these as detailed as you want. Just know that making them as detailed as possible will always give you just higher topology resolution. There we go. So let's move up in the world, and then let's... And then here's something, too, that we could do. We can absolutely come up to transform and do radial symmetry, right? So here we need to go radial symmetry on the z-axis. And so then we could work like this, too. So instead of doing it here like such, right, I could just come in through here. That's fine. Mask this off. I could work in radial symmetry to build up things consistently and keep it as symmetrical as possible. There we go. Say something like this. Give me a decent base to work off of. Didn't mean to smooth. I'll start doing enjoyable small projects, then move into bigger ones. Absolutely, yeah. And the other advice too I have when it comes to like once you're really comfortable with everything and you're like, yes, I'm now solid. I get the whole workflow process. I know what I have to do, et cetera, et cetera. Then the next thing for you to do at that point is to find enjoyable portfolio pieces, things that will ultimately end up in your portfolio. Keep it always fun. Keep it always fun is what I say. Because if the project is fun, then you'll stay encouraged to kick back to it. One of the early things I did a lot, which worked out in my favor, because before I started working at Maxon, I was working at Funko. And before Funko, I worked for Coach.com, the apparel company. And one of the things that really kept me going in the early days of grinding and getting a good portfolio is just making a portfolio that I enjoyed. So I did a lot of like fan art and stuff like that. So if you wanted to, like, my portfolio is not the best in the world, but if you wanted to see, because of, again, you want to also know where do you want to go when you're doing it. I knew I wanted to be a toy maker. So toy artists, we do a lot of we do a lot of fan art. So that was something that I leaned in on a lot. So early projects, I did things that made a lot of sense. And you'll see my projects get a little bit bigger, a little bit bolder. But even as something as simple as like this Hollow Knight character, you know, it was a small enough project to do, go through ZBrush, and then work it all the way to the end for the final render. But a key thing that really helped me out was, if we scroll down far enough, please scroll, thank you, there is the concept artist here. Oh my gosh. Scroll up. That's the 3D print. If you're going for toys, you want to show the 3D print. But here is the original concept artist, which I did credit in the actual thing here. If I click this, find the concept artist, and then you credit that concept artist. Talk to them and see if they don't mind. But showcase that you can make a project from start to finish following a concept. Because that's going to be a lot of what you do, whether it's in games, it's in film, whether it's in toys. This is a skill set that's really crucial. So take your concept and try to match it as much as possible. You'll have a little bit of like artistic freedom, but you want to try to match it closely. And that's a skill set that's really, really good to do. Something like that I showcased in this one, which is the one-eyed creature from Creature Box. So this was done like 5 years ago when I was trying to break into professional stuff. And so here I found the character. There was only really one side of it, so I got to make up a lot of it. But I walked it through that workflow process. So again, something to kind of to note, follow a concept as much as possible. And then you can deviate from that too at some point in time once you've shown that skill set. But it is a skill set that's worth keeping in touch in. All right. Now here we're not going to go super complicated with this tooth here. Just kind of getting the flow. But again, this is a VDM brush, right? So what I will do is I will turn off symmetry, and I will use the move infinite. I'm gonna now break symmetry, and we're gonna give us a little bit of an arch to this. And then I'm gonna use the damn standard. Let's go back to our X, Y, and Z from the top. Gonna focus on just a couple little interesting details. Again, a VDM is kind of like a base for you to start, so you don't necessarily need to style it too much. But there you go. That should be fine. And then we have a tooth. Or a fang. Let's label that appropriately, right? So, and then what's really cool about this, right, is what you could do is you could turn this into, you could come in here and say, you know what, create your multi-alpha. Boom, have your tooth. Okay, then we can go into base. Let's turn on symmetry. There we go, got symmetry on here. And then you could come in. Let's divide it up. Say something like this, right? And then you could turn this one as well. Click that. Did that not click for me? Why didn't that click for me? Oh, there it is. It just added to it. There you go. So now I have this too. So now when we go back to our little project here, we have our VDM here. So let's just divide this a bunch. Let's get a... Boom, we got our mouth. What is the resolution? Ooh, the resolution on that is nasty. That is A-okay. So let's just divide up a bit more. This is also where we could probably ZBrush. Let's do that. Let's delete lower. Let's ZBrush. Keep this the same. Polygroups down. This is something with VDM brushes you want to keep in mind, is that however the topology is, once it builds it, could actually give you terrible mesh. So you want to spend time cleaning it up. But here's some thoughts. Just wanted to covering stuff and things. We'll move into some curve brush stuff here too. Ooh. Let's get some water. How's everyone else doing? Is anybody going to Lightbox? If you're able to, if you're in the LA area. Awesome. Okay. There we go. There we go. Nice. Bang. Yes, there we go. Perfect. Fangs, fangs. Subdivide. There we go. Boom. This one's giving me problems. This one does not like this side. The mesh is nasty. There we go. There we go, yeah. You also should be able to hide, by the way. So that way you can get a little bit more of an angle. You don't have to stick. You don't have to stick with just the angle you're given. There we go. Now that was happening because of backface mask, so we can actually solve that. So we can come up here to backface mask, auto masking, brush auto masking, backface mask. And then this will also help with that as well. So there you go. So now that didn't cause that little issue. So VDM brushes, they're really cool, really fun. I'm gonna end up making a few, like, I want to make a few different like brush sets. I think it'd be kind of cool. But wanted to cover this a little bit as it was a very asked question. And also too, we just delete lower. If you need to make sure things are symmetrical, then let's just go to geometry, modify topology, and let's just mirror and weld that to make sure that that is lined up perfectly fine. So yes, so there is a couple things you could do actually. So the first thing is when you're dragging it, you can rotate this way, but with drag rec, it's based on placement. It's a great question. I've never tried using the drag stamp. Nope, that won't work. There's another one here, drag dot. So drag dot is one that you're looking for. And this one is interesting because it's going to be based off of how big your brush is. And it's going to be based on that focal shift. So let's tighten that focal shift up a little bit. There you go. So you can make a nice big brush size. And then you can kind of move this wherever you want this to be. And it will follow the normals and stuff like that. For what I was going for, and I was having something like this here, I kind of have an idea of where I want that to be placed. So I don't mind just using, just eyeballing it at that point. So half the fun of art is that it's not always perfect. But if you need it to be perfect, yeah, you could just kind of do it that way. And then from there, you can adjust as needed. So there you go. We're making weird stuff today. That's actually what what you're talking about. Yeah, it's a combination of the two. I like where your head's at. I like where your head's at. But that's what the drag dot is supposedly for. Or no, it's what it is for. I don't know why I said supposedly. You all understand where I stood, hopefully. Anyway. Where's it? Right up here. Nice. All right, curves. So curve brushes. I wanted to cover curve brushes in the stream too. I thought it'd be fun to just go over a few things. So curve brushes would be nice. You like being able to drag out to figure size, then maybe slide and adjust into place. Yeah, I see what I see what you're meaning. Yeah. Okay. So curves. I'm going to show you guys some cool stuff with some curves here. Actually, let's just do this. Okay, curves. Let's start with the curve tube. So I love curve brushes, especially for like filigree or any type of like framing of an object. For example, actually, let's do this. Let's open up a new project. Let's go here. One of the coolest things I like about curves is the simple fact that you can frame a mesh based on polygroups. So this is something too that I really enjoy. So for example, let's say, for the sake of arguments, that we have a suit here. So let's make this guy have somewhat of a suit. I'm going to mask off these points and then this point. Say something like that. Because I'm going to invert that. There we go. We're going to sharpen this. And then we're going to... not polygroups. Let's just go to subtool. Let's go to our extract, zero thickness, and extract and accept. There we go. So this will be our base suit here. Okay, but we're also going to do some polygrouping as well. So let's do slice curve. Now, slice curve does not use symmetry, even though symmetry is turned on. So just something to kind of be aware. But that's okay. Ooh, that's interesting. I want to go to the shadow side. There we go. Shadow nose. Okay. Let's do this way. Just as the example. Okay, and then we can come through here and mirror and weld, so we have the same thing. What makes this really neat, and let's actually just blow this up just a little bit. Hold control to make that actually on the object. So what's cool about this approach is that with the curve tube, you can actually come up here to stroke, and you can open up curve functions, modifiers, and sizes, right? The curve function, actually, we can do polygroups and frame a mesh. And now you have this ability here. So if I were to tap this with a curve, now I'm framing that mesh based on that polygroup selection set. If my brush size is smaller, I can go ahead and make a smaller brush size, which will give me obviously smaller curves. Now, what's fun about this, and actually I am using symmetry, so if I turn off symmetry in tap, it's still going to do the same. The symmetry is actually going to do two of the same thing, meaning with symmetry turned on, if I were to hit this, and then let's just clear that, and then let's go to polygroups. Yes, polygroups. And then auto groups, and then click that. You can see here I have two meshes there. So we want to avoid that. So anytime you use the frame mesh, and even though it is symmetrical, just turn off symmetry and then touch it, because it's going to hit every one of those. Now, what's cool about this, though, is that you're not stuck with this topology that it's giving me. First thing you can do is you can come up to Brush, and you can go to our modifiers, and then this slider right here, Brush Modifier. If we slide this down, so let's say we need something a little bit more square. So let's actually move this over here. Modifier, we need something a little bit more square. Let's hit 4, and then let's click that, and then that's going to give me a kind of squarish mesh, right? But if I needed this maybe triangulated, let's go 3, touch that, it's going to give me tris. And you get the point. So if we do like hexagon, there we go. So you can adjust that easily based on just this one modifier, which will help you out at that point. This is also really cool because then you can also do the strength multiplier, so multiply by 2. Zoom in, touch that. Now that's going to make it stand up a little bit more. So now you can have something that looks a lot like that, and that's going to follow that curve. We can adjust this back to 1, click it again, etc. The other thing too is if we wanted to twist this at some point, if you wanted to make any type of really interesting changes, when you're hovering over your brush size or that curve, you get a blue kind of modifier like manipulator brush. You have a red one, which is the main brush size. By clicking that, it depicts how big that brush is going to be. But then if I press and hold, if I hover over the curve, and I have this blue one that's engaged, now that's going to adjust this brush size. So this is more for modifying it, and then the brush size here is more for how big or small something should be. So we could say like brush size 15, that's too big. Brush size 5, there you go. That might be a little bit better. Let's try 3, perfect. But let's say I wanted to twist it, right? So now what I could do is when I click on something, I could press Control, and I can actually start twisting and moving that shape. And so this can affect how big something is based on the brush size of this guy. So by clicking that and then pressing Control, I can now start causing a lot of cool twisting effect happening within that mesh, which is really neat. So if you wanted to give it some sort of twist, you could. But that's also kind of like to help manipulate how big something might be. So you can move more of it by that big manipulator, or you can drop it down and move a small portion of it. Either way, this is the difference between those two brushes. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, you know, I try to take care of myself. Cool. So this part is really fun, but what makes it even cooler is the fact that when you're drawing out other meshes, we can control other meshes as well. And one of the ways that we can control how we drag out shapes like this is, of course, using the picker menu. Because right now, the curve brush's default is to whatever point I pick, and then I draw out, it's going to only access that first vertice, and everything else is not going to matter. So it's just going to do whatever it wants. Meaning, as I drag this out, if I drag this through his chest and back down, it's going to go through his chest. But what if I want to follow his arm all the way down? Like cabling, as an example. Well, this would be a pain to start moving this around, right? So instead of doing it this way, what I could do for, like, let's say, again, like cabling or whatnot, first off, let's just go ahead and let's split unmasked points. There we go. So for cabling, what we could do is come up here to the picker menu, go to depth, and this picker menu is the most unused menu in ZBrush, but it's so strong because the depth portion, once Z is just as I explained it, it's going to pick the one vertice that is on your mesh, and it's going to follow that. Continuous Z is going to continuously update which vertices it's falling in line. Closest will do closest to your screen, and furthest will go furthest from your screen, or furthest from Z. So here, I can change this to continuous. And again, this is once, right? That's one Z. Now here's continuous Z. It follows that mesh all the way through, which is great. So if you wanted to do any type of custom shapes here, so let's say, again, like maybe he has a tube that's coming from here and it's going over his bicep. Now it follows that bicep. And even further, you can come up here to brush, go to depth, and you can adjust the depth. So if you need to embed it, stock that here. If we need to embed that depth, it will push that further in. If we need to have it float, it can go further out. And so these are ways that you can control how this actually works. By the way, Ian, why have ZBrush devs always avoid implementing curves in the same way as other 3D editors, with control points with handles for precise control? So ZBrush is designed specifically with a little bit of a, it's different than other 3D applications. ZBrush has been around for 25 years, and the way they design the curves has other strengths that typical like Bevier, or not Bevier, but other like spline controls. It has its own strengths and weaknesses. The curve system was designed for more artistic freedom in control with it. You do have certain points. It's just not like handles and stuff like that that you can control. But one of the main benefits is it's when you draw a spline, you have your spline, you know, you have to make sure that spline's redrawn. It's easier, in my opinion, it's easier to continue drawing out a curve because it actually functions really well. So you have this ability to come through and continuously draw things out. And also you can manipulate and move things around. And you have a lot of control with curves you may not think about. One of the things is actually up here under the stroke menu. We have, again, curve functions. So you have the ability to do curve snapping, or your snap step. So if you increase the snap step on that, right, then you're actually going to get your vertices stretched out a little bit further than if you were to bring this in, let's say 0.2. If I do this, so now my resolution is more compressed. This is actually really helpful for like if you have multiple objects that are not attached or welded. This will actually help step it a little bit more. But this is something that's also updatable. So you can update it on the fly at any point in time by just coming through and adjusting it. So it's very artist friendly. Substeps as well. If you needed to increase the substeps, you can do that. And then you have certain things like elastic here. So elastic, what's really cool is I can continue to draw out sharp points and extend. So this is really good for like connection points, right? So this is something that I really think is beneficial. Liquid as well. I can continue drawing this out and just keep my curve going. So instead of just drawing out the curve and then just kind of hoping for the best, this is actually helping kind of update that on the fly. So it has its own strengths, which is just different than how a spline functions. And it's just a very artistic friendly way to approach it. Hope that answers your question. Also, too, we have repel strength, too. This is something that's new. I think 2020, actually. I want to say 2020 or 2021 ZBrush. I can't remember, but repel is pretty cool. Because repels, what's fun about it is you can draw out a thing, and then let's say I go straight. Let's actually turn off bin start here. So repel, let's do fall off heavy, strength heavy. Actually, let's pick a better brush. The brush I have for this is actually the Curve Alpha, which has its own repel strength. So if I were to drop this off, you can see here it's going to find that point, and then it's going to have like a little bit of a repel fall off for it. And again, with the depth, you can push the depth in a little bit more. And so you can draw stuff like this. This is also alpha generated. So you can change your alpha at any point in time. So you can have kind of a tube here and maybe have some fun little horns happening. Or you could come through here, have a softer one, stuff like that. So having curves is really cool. But one of the things I like about it a lot is we make some really fun, cool things with it is also the ability to adjust the size of the stroke, which is, for me, one of the coolest parts about it. So with Curve Tube, as just the brush I like to use this on, if I wanted to make any type of filigree, actually, let's do this. Let's add a plane. My brain's kind of tangenting anyway. Let's add a plane 3D. Let's just hit solo. So if, let's say you wanted to do some sort of filigree with your brush, right? So you wanted to draw like some cool custom shapes with it. Let's use our curve tube. Let's make sure we actually can reset things. So if you ever need to reset a brush or to reset your brushes, just come down here and hit reset your brushes. And that will reset all your brushes as such. So then you can, if you're messing around with your settings, don't be afraid to reset things. So let's just put stroke over here on this side so I know what I'm playing with. But one of the cool things about this is the ability to adjust the size of it. So this is also another strength of it. So let's say I wanted to make something like this, but I need this to have some fall off and then regrowing, right? So intensity under the curve modifier is always set, is turned on, but the sizing of it is not turned on. So if I turn on the size and now I come through and let's say we make a small grid change. So what this is going to tell ZBrush is go thin to thick to thin. When I update this, that's exactly how that's going to happen. You're going to go thin to thick to thin. What if I wanted that the other way around? What if I wanted to go thick to, like really thick to thin to somewhat thick? There you go. So now I can get this kind of custom shape. And so you can play with this as needed to get that kind of filigree, right? And then again, going to brush and then coming back to modifiers, I can actually say like, well, filigree has like sharp edges to it. So let me use 3 for the brush modifier. And now I have something that looks like this. And then again, I can make my brush size a little bit bigger or smaller to help control that. And then I can kind of, I can actually move the whole thing too, which is a lot of fun. Awesome. I will keep that in mind, sir. Thank you, thank you. Always love the feedback. Always appreciate it. Total Jazz. Love the name too, by the way. So yeah. Anyway, so I wanted to cover VDMs and curve brushes in the stream just because I've gotten some questions on it. So I thought this would be a really great way to do that, to really talk about it. The other aspect too is, of course, lazy mouse in control with your curve brushes. So for example, if I can control Z here, and then I turn on lazy mouse, what lazy mouse allows us to do is press and hold shift and then have like a true snap or a true straight line. So you can actually come through, let's say something like this, and you can have sharp points. Now, of course, if your geometry is not going to be good enough to support that, then, you know, you'll want to, having the shift point is only going to do as well as the curve will allow. So having a smaller brush will actually give you a better curve, right? And then something like that would actually allow the snapping itself. But knowing that it's there is helpful, so then you can make sharp turns and cuts and stuff like that. So it's just thinking about like how to make these curve functions with it. The other brush we have that really supports the curve ability is multicurve. And this is something I really like, multicurve tube, because the benefit here is that I can have 1 curve, 2 curve, 3, etc., and I can adjust all of them at the same time or manipulate one and then the other. So something to just kind of help with whatever you're looking for. There is also a masking curve. So if we come here to mask and mask curve, you can actually change this to lasso if you wanted to. Sorry, let's not that. Let's go curve. There we go. So you could use a curve on this point. I keep hitting the wrong ones. Hit Alt to get that kind of like smooth sauce, and then you can mask off using that curve. So curves can be used in quite a few fun ways. So if you wanted to mask off certain spots, then this will be a really great way to do that, using that kind of curve technology, just giving you a little bit more control of that. So just a fun way. So not just curve for adding geometry, but curve for adding masking as well. Awesome. What time is it? I'm curious. It's 11:19. Yay, fun. So hopefully this was helpful. Wanted to just kind of run over those a little bit. Let's go back. I'm going to go back to making just a couple little VDM things. And then from there, then we'll call the stream. But if you guys have any questions, continue to ask. I love it. I love it. All right. So let's go back to, I'm going to go to project, going to go to miscellaneous, and let's come here to this template and say no. Okay, great. Awesome. Actually, I know we did curves. We already did curves VDM. I kind of want to sculpt a pumpkin. I'm kind of feeling a pumpkin. You guys want to see a pumpkin? It's Halloween. I'm starting to feel, well, I've been feeling Halloweeny for some time. Super bright, blinding light. Didn't mean to do that for you guys. I think we should make a pumpkin. And then we can do a jack-o'-lantern or something like that if there's time for that. Let's do that. Because then I can make some VDM brushes. Ooh, that's what we could do. Ooh, we can make some VDM pumpkin brushes. That's a very interesting question. How many more years of VFX or the digital art field could survive without getting changed with AI jobs in the future? I'm not going to avoid this question, but I'm going to preface that I work for Maxon, who has come out publicly several times and had said that AI in our tools would only be added if there is a benefit to it. That being said, AI has changed almost every industry it's touched. I have personally benefited from the position of teaching, which is great, and teaching art, which is something that I enjoy doing a lot. But AI tools are here, and they are here to stay. And what I can really say about it is to, if nothing else, be aware of what is there and what is possible and how it's being implemented. You know, I personally have not really dove into AI that much because my job doesn't require it. And it's not something I have a lot of interest in currently, but I'm always aware of what AI tools are being used, and I know what tools are in existence now. So it's changed everything. The industries have changed, and really it's being aware of that change I think is going to be the most benefit to you. So, but at the end of the day, I actually just read this article, and it was a super cool article where it was a photography contest, and a photographer submitted a non-AI image in an AI contest and ended up winning the contest, but then was disqualified because that artist broke the rules. They didn't submit an AI image, but it was to showcase their point was creativity is still in one of the things that makes us human, and that's one of the things I love about it. So I'm in favor of artist creativity, human creativity, always have been, always will be. So, but be aware of it. I think that's the smartest thing you can do is be aware of what is out there and yeah, and go from there. So hopefully that was a helpful answer. Okay. We're gonna do a pumpkin while we chat. We're gonna do a pumpkin to wrap the stream up. Why not? Pumpkins are cool. show some cool stuff with that. And hopefully the VDMs and curve information was helpful for you guys. Even me breaking the first VDM, because, you know, I like to do that. All right, so let's go here, make Polymesh 3D, and then let's go ahead and let's just start something simple. Let's go to active symmetry on the y-axis, radial symmetry. So we have this, bam, there we go. And let's do our damn standard. Speaking of artist creations and stuff like that, one of the things that makes me super happy about being an artist is the fact that art is not perfect. I like that art is a imperfect medium. I know in our industries, games, films, all that stuff, you know, people strive for perfection, but personally, I think imperfection is beautiful. We're going to use Dynamesh for this project. And actually, let's do this. All right. So one of the things I'm doing here too is I'm relying on the alpha to give me imperfect strokes and structures, because this is something that you see in pumpkins all the time. The striations of the skin and the fleshy bits of the pumpkin has all these like bumps and crevices. I'm not a big smooth guy anymore. If anything, if I don't like something, I'll take it away. And Dynamesh it. Okay. There we go. Nice little pumpkin base. And let's do this. Let's come up here to our stream. Let's do ZBrush projects. I'm gonna just call this a pumpkin. We'll make it into something later. Last year I did Venoken, which was a venomized pumpkin. Maybe we'll do something. Just call it pumpkin for now. I'm original. Last question. Doesn't have to be your last question. What are your thoughts and suggestions on people who are trying to get a job in art industries, but are failing to get in? Ooh, it's an that's a great question. That's a little bit of a tricky question too, because there are so many factors that come into why a person may or may not be hired. So we'll take away a lot of speculation and just kind of answer as much as like my own personal experience. So one of the things that I think can really take away from your ability to get hired is the transparency of workflow, showcasing how your workflow is or isn't is something that has prevented me in the past from getting work. So for example, as making toys, one of the things I had to do was showcase, and actually let's pull my portfolio back up just for a second. One of the things I had to showcase in making toys is the manufacturing process. So with a piece like this, you know, first off, you want to show the beautiful color and the renders and all that good jazz and a lot of close-ups and the detail and the level of quality within it, right? But then as you move on down, you also want to show the non-colored version. This was something that actually prevented me from getting work because people thought I was hiding imperfections in the actual color, which can be done. You know, may not seem like at first, for example, like the snake on his chest as a tattoo. Well, that is actually a detail. If we do we have a close-up? Did I do a close-up? Well, anyway, it's a detail that's actually physically there. And so if I were to click on that, let's go ahead and expand it. There you go. Yeah, let's zoom in. Oh, okay. Anyway, that tattoo is actually a sculpted detail. It's not just paint. So it's that's something that I had to kind of learn. And then I needed to show that it could be manufactured or produced. And so in doing that, for example, here, you could see all the details. So I 3D printed it. So these were things that definitely benefited as a whole. That's the first thing. The second thing would actually be like concept sculpting to a concept. Anytime you need to sculpt to a concept, showcasing that skill set. I didn't show that at first, and that did not help me out when I was like needing to kind of showcase that I could do what was being asked. So little things like that definitely play a role. The other thing too is networking. Networking is the #1 way to meet, greet, and get hired. It's probably the one thing I'll recommend the most. You have to do it in a way that makes the most sense for you, like in your area, because not everybody has access to going to events, going to shows. You know, they're not always there in those areas. Travel sometimes can be cumbersome. So if you can't meet people in person, then you want to meet people online. And when you do this, what you're doing is you're putting your hat in the ring and being known of being available. So having the connection with people can be super beneficial. So what I recommend is, of course, just, you know, going online, introducing yourself to people, introducing yourself to anybody who is like, hey, you know, if you like a company, for example, like I really liked, what was the name of that company? Big Shoddy Toy Works. Yeah, this was years ago. Anyway, I reached out to them on Instagram and was just like, I introduced myself. Hi, my name's Ian. I am a sculptor. I love your work, because I did. So I was like, I love your work. I'd love to do, you know, at some point work with you. Here's my portfolio. If there's ever any interest for an opportunity, let me know. Sometimes just reaching out really helps a lot. So doing that was something that was very beneficial to me. So ultimately, my whole point here is, yeah, just introduce yourself. Jump out there and, you know, let people know who you are and what you're about. And then from there, you know, put your application in. And then again, yeah, putting your application in where you need to put your application. That's something that is going to definitely help out a lot in that area. So there's a few ways. It's hard to say, though. Again, at the end of the day, it's hard to say necessarily why somebody does or does not get hired. So you just kind of have to be a little bit honest with yourself as to what is it that you know, you might be missing. And that's the other thing too. Don't be afraid to ask. Just because you get a rejection letter in the mail doesn't mean that you weren't considered. It just might mean that there might be somebody else they would rather go to. So there was a couple times, it's a little bit of a long shot, but there was a couple times when I was rejected, and I wrote back a thank you email. And then I also asked in that thank you email, like, thank you for considering me. That was a really, really awesome, and, you know, so it was like very positive speak. But then I was like, if it's at all possible, could you tell me if there was something in my portfolio or in my resume that was lacking? And there was at least one time that I got a response back, and that was really helpful. They had told me that my work just wasn't up to par, and that my presentation was not super clean. And so I went and took that information and revamped it. So if you can get somebody to take a look at you and give you an honest review as to like, hey, is this something that is like, am I meeting standards where standards need to be met? And if the answer is no, then that's a great place to start. So little things like that can help out. But again, trying to match the quality of where you are and where people, quote, can meet you. You got to be able to kind of discern your portfolio against somebody else's. And here's the thing. The easiest cheat sheet for you to do, especially for like portfolio presentation, is go find your favorite artist. Whoever that artist is, doesn't matter. Find your favorite artist. Go look at their portfolio. Take a good solid look at their portfolio, and then pretty much see like what are they doing. If you want to get in games, show your UVs, show your texture sets, show your wireframe, show your breakdown. Give your, try to understand how many tries can you have, how many verts can you have, what's your max, overall resolution, texture quality, everything. And then just try to basically replicate what your favorite artist is doing, because the standard of a portfolio is pretty much the same universally. You want to show everything to show you can do the job. And then understanding what software is industry standard and what people are using, why they're using it, and then understanding that software as well. So there's a lot of little things that you just kind of have to keep in mind. So again, find your favorite portfolio, find your favorite artist's portfolio, and then try to replicate that as best as you can. Picked the wrong one. I wanted this one. Actually, before I do that, let's do this. Before I do that, actually, let's just do a little bit of a scale down, something like that. And actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to Dynamesh this. Yeah, not a problem. Happy to help. There we go. There we go. Yeah, something like that would be kind of nice. And then let's go to bend curve. And then let's get a little bit of there we go, something like that. Let's just stretch this. Let's actually add a couple more curves here. All right. So I'm getting a little bit of breakage here on the topology. And that's because I'm using Dynamesh and it's not super optimal for bending. I can also drop down. Even though you've made curve changes, you could drop down the curve. And then you can just move it entirely. So say something like that. Okay, that should be fine. And we're just sculpting crazy, so I'm going to accept that. Again, asymmetrical sculpting is ideal. So we're going to use now we're going to use the snake hook. And here's the fun part about snake hook. Snake hook is great because you can move mesh, but you can also press and hold Alt, and you can move the mesh to the underlining vertice. So you can snap to a certain point and kind of stretch this out a little bit. And then I could drop this in just a bit. So I can do this. Pressing and holding Alt will allow me to kind of pull this out. There we go. Boom. Something like that. No problem, no problem. Just go to hit save. Oops, wrong one. Thought I had the curve build up, or the clay build up, but I did not. There we go. Also, if you're tired of changing your brush sizes between brushes, like if I need to make sure that my curve brush is the same size, just turn on remember draw size, which is up here by default. So then if I pick like the move brush and then I make this a big brush, then when I go back to my clay buildup, it remembers the clay buildup size. It's a little simple thing, but sometimes it's the little things that matter. There we go. Let's hit solo just for a second. I'm kind of sculpting underneath this. Yeah, not a problem. And here we're gonna kind of just like carve in here just a little bit, because you'll have a little bit of a eroding away, or go rebuild that. And actually, let's go to our move. Just that size. Let's go to brush. Let's go to curve and then AccuCurve. And then hit, there we go. Just put this up a bit. That way we can get a little bit of a sharp edge. So something like that. There we go. Looking kind of cool. And same thing. Let's come down here. We'll cause that to be sharp. Push that in a little bit. Have a little bit of a fall off. So that's going to be embedded into the pumpkin. Let's go here. Skip that. There. Okay, what's our time? We got a couple more minutes. Okay. A couple random pumpkin images on the side. Going back to what we were talking about too with like concept and stuff like that, reference is really key too. If you guys are sculpting without reference, especially if you're learning, I'd say for learning purposes, like sculpting with reference is really good. Eventually you'll move away from references on some things, but you know, I only see a pumpkin a couple times a year. We know what a pumpkin looks like. Sometimes I like to kind of get a sense of like the natural flow of things and getting an idea of like, oh, well, how does this thing work, you know? So I'm not necessarily going one-to-one copying, but it's like I want to know that something looks as close or as, you know, as relevant as it needs to be. So look at reference, even if it like seems a little like, oh, it's a pumpkin. At the same time, it's like that reference is going to help you out. So don't be afraid to pull up reference. Eventually, reference is going to be meh. Depends on what you're doing. Like, it's a pumpkin. But you know what I mean. Hopefully you guys know what I mean. There we go. I don't want that to be super sharp. There we go. But this will... It's going to kind of have like a little bit of a cavity in here. Just kind of, I don't know if I'm going to go full stylized with it. I mean, I guess, in a sense, everything is kind of, like, I'm not going to go full realism with it, but I'm thinking about what kind of, like, every year I sculpt a real pumpkin, but I also like to just make a pumpkin in ZBrush. So I'm thinking about what kind of jack-o'-lantern type I want to design. So working on the base. I never really decide too much on what style I'm going to go for. I just kind of do it. My style is kind of an amalgamation of like mashing things together until I'm satisfied with how it looks. So it's kind of stylized, kind of not. It's kind of me. It's kind of my thing. But it won't be like full stylization. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to be like it won't be like what Shane Nelson does, my buddy and mentor. I love his workflow and that cartoony stylization. It's not going to be quite like that. But here's a cool thing. If you guys want to keep things like clean and sharp and polished while you're using Dynamesh, then what you could do as well is come over to Dynamesh and turn on polish. So let's do this. I'm going to save this real fast. Now kind of look at like how this is looking. And if I hit turn polish, smooth down, and then re-Dynamesh, right, it's going to give me this kind of stylized approach to it. So that's something too that you can definitely rely on a bit. Okay. So here, if I were to go to polish and then do that, you can see here, you kind of get this vibe. Sometimes I will do this just to clean up forms and kind of hit more of that stylization type of look. So yeah, sometimes I'll do this and kind of get that. And I'll use this as a base. It just depends on what I'm going for. Yeah. Okay. Color's always nice. So of course if you want to turn RGB on, we can go color here and then kind of get a base color here. Well, the stems are more brown with a green tint to it, right? So what you could do, because they're green and then they turn kind of brown. So I like to lean in on the brown side of it first. If I were to color this, then I would kind of come a little bit more like something like this, like offshoot. Also, if you're going for color information, try to lean more towards a brighter material like skin shade. Or if you really want to just focus on color and nothing else, go to flat color. And this will give you the true color information of what you're going for. So if you're like, what kind of stem do I want? This kind of color is going to be great. So then I can go back to my other material, because materials will affect your color information. If you hover over your material, you can see just how different the shades of that is looking, right? So don't let the material kind of fool you. If you want to know what color you're going for, then definitely pull into the flat color. Get the color that you're going to go for. There you go. And switch. And then when you go here to color fill, oops, wrong one. Let's go color fill. There you go. Boom. Pick this one. Now you know what that color is going to be. So that when you pick another material, like your start material, that difference is going to be there. And then I would paint any type of like green hue and stuff on there if possible. But yeah, that's going to give you a different adjustment. So skin shade at that point. And then what I like to do too, just to see depth and stroke of my models, I like to actually go up to my render preview AO and turn this on. And the intensity set to 50, which is quite crazy. So I usually do like 25. But what this will do is as I'm sculpting, turn RGB off. As I'm sculpting, it's going to give me that shadow depth information and tell me how deep something's going to be. And I really like that. That's super helpful. So as I come through and I start adding some detail here, like in this case, I'm not painting any color, but it's just updating that shadow information. And that's going to be very helpful. Yeah, I love looking at stylized stuff as well. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I like it. Also, anything cartoon is hard to sculpt. Some of the first things I was sculpting were like cartoon stuff, and it was very, very difficult in the beginning. Especially like one of my favorite pieces, still to this day, even though I've done it years and years ago, was actually this Gravity Falls piece. So this is kind of my own take on like the print itself, right? But this was really interesting because these characters are very hard to capture, right? If you look at like, let's see, Gravity Falls. If you look at this art style, I love this art style, right? But like, look at like, what's the depth information? Like their eyes are floating on their head, like Mabel and Dipper, like, you know what I mean? Like it's really hard to capture the styles. So this was some of the first things that like I really tried to do in my design, because it was something that I was just like, oh, how do I do that? And so yeah, and then of course too, trying to capture any type of emotion. Like they're fun, but they're also challenging, and I love that. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to create just some random bumps and textures on it, and then I think we're going to call it a day because it's almost noon, and I usually go from 10 to noon. So hopefully you guys like the VDM and curve brush breakdown, or just kind of walk through a little bit. Thought it would be a different approach to a stream today. So here, let's do this. I'm going to go standard, and I'm going to go with a drag rec. And then I'm going to go ahead and go with this alpha 28. Now I have I have symmetry turned on, but what I'm going to do is actually up the resolution a bit here. So we're going to go geometry. Resolution will go 256 or 254 rather, and then redo that. There you go. Gives me just a little bit more information. And then we're going to drop the intensity down. And actually what we could do, instead of doing it like this, we could just kind of create our own texture as well. Like you can do this kind of thing here, which is kind of nice. Just give us a basic, like a little bump, which is fine. That's usually how I do it, which is nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to try something because I like experimenting. So let's go to surface noise. And this is, of course, just Dynamesh. So it's not really too crazy. But let's go color blend 0, and I kind of want to make my own like kind of bump texture here. So this is going to be based off of the 3D. So first thing is let's look at the scale or the noise information. So here's our noise information. Let's find something that's like a decent size. So yeah, something like that would be kind of cool. Pumpkins are more smooth, but they have imperfections. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and just mess with this curve information. So with this curve information, this is going to kind of allow me to manipulate these bumps as much as possible. So let me get something like this. There we go. Okay. And then the strength, we can push this the opposite way. We can push it however we want. Strength is fine, so let's go negative 0.005. That's a lot. Negative 0.0007. There you go, that should be pretty good. Now, it should be fine. Let's go here. Do I want to offset that? No. Okay. Let's actually do this. Let's go up a little bit more. Yeah, I want subtle. Thinking subtle could be pretty cool. Okay, something like this would be pretty nice. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to hit OK. So that's going to give me kind of this little effect on it. But what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to turn it off. And then now I'm going to go ahead and open up my brush menu. And now I'm going to go to surface. I'm going to turn noise on, and I'm going to paste this information. And let's turn this off here. And actually, let's do a drag rec. Let's up the intensity here. Actually, not drag rec. Let's just go. Did I say drag rec? Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Let's turn the focal shift up a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to be just pulling some of this texture just a little bit here. Give me some variation. And then we'll just turn that noise information off. And then we'll come back to our alpha, and then let's just combine it with some of this other, these other bumps, kind of giving us a little bit of a multi-textured skin. If I re-Dynamesh, now a lot of that information is just going to get a little bit recessed back. There we go. Now I kind of have this little bumpy texture with some pretty interesting imperfections. Very subtle approach, but again, then I could just turn this back on if I wanted to. Apply this as a mask. Hide this mask here. And then I can just do a little bit of an inflate or deflate to kind of give me some of those pores back. Yeah, something like that. That's pretty cool. Clear that mask. I like that. I dig. Hotkey to hide a mask, hotkey to mask a certain layer without going to another subtool and hiding the rest. If I understand what you're talking about, by pressing Control and tapping, let's turn off here. By pressing Control and tapping your gizmo on a different object. So in this case, for example, here, let's merge these two things together. So I'm just going to merge them together. Merge visible. There we go. Okay. So now this thing's merged together. So what you want to do is press and hold Control and then tap. Press and hold Control and tap the object that you want to have unmasked. And then if these objects have different polygroups in the same object, they're not welded together, or the polygroup is just visible, again, it's going to mask off that. Then you don't have to hide any of that stuff. Now, if you have the same polygroup all the way through, then it's not working, right? But let's say you have different polygroups, but you want to actually keep them to have the same polygroup, but you want to hide one portion of the other. Then what you could do is go ahead and select a small portion of the object you want to showcase because it's not welded. And then from there, it's Control Shift and A tap. And then that will bring about just that one object, even though it's the same polygroup. Then you can mask off at that point. So if you have two objects that are welded together in the same polygroup, the Control tap does not work. So instead, you want to just select a small portion, Control Shift A to to reveal the rest of that selected object, but it won't hide the others. So then you can mask it off. If you have different polygroups, then just Control tap will do that just for you, so you don't have to constantly hide. And once this gizmo's out, just Control tap, Control tap, Control tap on any of those objects. As long as the polygroup is there, then you are good to go. And that should work even if the object is connected. So let's say here, different object, right? So Control and then Control tap, even if that is welded together, it's just going to work on the polygroup portion of itself. So hopefully that helped out for you. There you go. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up the stream today. Ideally, again, today, I tried something different. Thought it'd be kind of cool. We covered VDMs, how to make VDM brushes, and then just showcase some really cool stuff. And then we also did the curve brush and showcased the settings and, different ways you can use a curve brush. And then we made a pumpkin. So yeah. Anyway, hopefully that was beneficial. I really enjoyed myself. I like streaming. Next week, what's next week? The 22nd. I don't know if I'll be streaming next week because we have quite a few events. So if you are going to Lightbox, let me know. Or if you're going to Substance Days in Los Angeles, let me know because I will be at both of those. But one of the things, we'll bring this back up just for a second. We do have the ZBrush Sculpt Off announcement. So if you guys are looking to participate in the Sculpt Off this year, then please follow the link that I'm going to send in the chat. Sculpt Off happens once a year. It's one of the the most notoriously well-known Sculpt Offs that ZBrush has run for the last, oh man, was it 10 years now? Has it been 10 Sculpt Offs? So anyway, it's been fantastic. But ZBrush is one of the best Sculpt Offs in the year. So if you guys want to do that, it's open to the public. More info in the link below. That's all being said, guys. I will chat with you all later. And just stay tuned. We will be having a Halloween stream coming up soon with a bunch of artists. So more on that later. All right, guys. That's it. That's going to call it for me. I will talk to you all later. Bye for now.